In today's walkthrough, we will learn how to fill a Word document invoice template using the Cloudmersive Convert API in Power Automate. While there are a few different ways we can work with invoice templates in Power Automate, using this option fills all the placeholder values in a template document in one single action. That limits the size and complexity of our flow considerably. In this demonstration, we will use the Cloudmersive Convert API as a custom connector in Power Automate rather than use the Cloudmersive Document Conversion connector, which is available in the Power Automate catalog. Using the Convert API as a custom connector gives us access to more API iterations than the published connectors do, and it also gives existing enterprise customers the option to make API calls against managed or private cloud endpoints instead of Cloudmersive's default public cloud endpoint. This means we can create fast and highly scalable flows to fit an enterprise volume use case. We've created other videos on this channel that walk through the custom connector upload process using the OpenAPI URL method. We will start by creating a manually triggered instant cloud flow. On the one hand, going with a manually triggered flow allows us to create so-called flow buttons that we can share with members of our organization, but more importantly, it serves a relevant testing purpose before building automated flows. Manual triggers allow us to simulate how data might enter our flow in an automated Cloudflow scenario if we were to parse that data from any external source, like an HTTP response, for example. After all, one of the primary reasons to build a flow like this is to take as much manual intervention out of the invoicing process as possible. We will find customizable manual trigger inputs by opening our initial flow action. In here, we will enter some manual inputs that match the fields on our invoice template, and that correspond to the data type each field expects. The template I'm using has placeholders for the invoice number, the due date and current date, information about our client and the organization they represent, and 3 different rows of invoice items. This part of our process is a bit repetitive, since all we're doing is mirroring information from another document. I'll be skipping ahead to where I've created relevant inputs for almost every placeholder in the example document. After we've finished setting our manual inputs, we'll bring the template Word document into our flow using a getFileContent action. I'll be getting my file from a OneDrive folder, but we can use the same action with SharePoint if need be. At this point, we will incorporate our Cloudmersive API action from the custom Convert API connector we uploaded. After we add a new action, we will find our custom connector by clicking on the Runtime dropdown and selecting the custom option from this list. Once we've reached the actions list, we will search for an action titled Replace Multiple Strings in Word DOCX Document and Return Result. We will notice there are a few other APIs on this list we could also use to fill an invoice template, but this particular action will condense the entire template filling process into one single action in our flow. On top of that, it will return the Word document byte array directly, rather than return a temporary editing URL as some of these other actions do. With our Replace Strings action open, we will click Show All to view the request parameters. First, we will add our Word document file bytes to the Input File Bytes field. After that, we will move down to the Replace String array and click Add a New Item. In this array, we can enter an unlimited number of strings in our document to match against and replace with new content. Using bracketed placeholder text like I've used in my template document makes this process very easy. Filling in each individual field takes some time, but don't forget we can replace every placeholder string in our document in one go. This makes using a template document extremely efficient in the long run. For certain placeholder strings in our invoice, such as the total and subtotal values, we won't want to use data from user-supplied inputs. Instead, we will use some of Power Automate's mathematical expressions to combine values from other columns. For example, in an invoice total column, we will want to create an expression that multiplies the quantity value in that row against the price value. In much the same way, our eventual subtotal value will use an expression that takes the sum of our totals. Once we've finished setting replacements for our placeholder strings, we can do whatever we want with our new document. The string replacement action will return file bytes directly, which we can save or send anywhere in our network. In this case, we'll go ahead and do both. We will first add a create file action to generate our file from the byte array and save it to a specific folder. This will allow us to name our document, and we can use that name in the subsequent step. After that, we will add an approval action. Specifically, we will add an approval that waits for the invoice to be checked by some relevant stakeholder before the invoice goes anywhere. We might imagine adding one or two more steps after this approval takes place, such as a step that converts our document to PDF, or even an email step that automatically sends the approved invoice to our client. We can add our byte array directly into the add attachment field in our approval and use the file name from our create file step. Once we're done creating our approval, we will save our flow and run a test. That means adding information into each one of our manual trigger inputs to make sure data enters our invoice document correctly. When our flow finishes running, we will first notice how fast this step was, thanks to my managed instance endpoint. Next, we will find our filled invoice in the folder we specified, and we can review the contents to make sure they were entered correctly. It's very easy to make initial errors when we first build a flow like this because there are lots of moving parts. But once we smooth those out, we will have a minimalistic flow in place that generates and approves invoices from a reusable template. If we don't end up using certain placeholders in this template, we can also implement steps that replace those with white space so they don't show up in the final document. And with that, we've reached the end of our walkthrough. If you have any questions about using custom Cloudmersive connectors in your flow, or about any other relevant use cases for Cloudmersive APIs and Power Automate, feel free to check out the rest of our channel, and also feel free to contact any member of our team directly.